Pam Bondi's voice cuts through the committee room like a cracked bell, sharp, brittle, desperate to dominate the air. "You people twist everything. This isn't about me." She spits, her eyes flashing beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Across the table, Jasmine Crockett doesn't flinch. Her expression is unreadable, her poise deliberate. The chaos around her only sharpens the stillness she carries, like calm water in the middle of a storm. Cameras zoom in. Reporters lean forward. A headline flickers across millions of screens within minutes. Bondi loses IT during heated exchange. Bondi keeps talking. But it's no longer clear if anyone's listening. Her voice trembles between fury and fear, a performance without an audience. Crockett waits, her gaze locked, steady, surgical, silent. And then, when the noise finally collapses into a fragile quiet, Crockett leans in just slightly and asks, almost softly, "Congresswoman, do you even know what you're defending anymore?" The words land like a verdict. The room stills. A beat to long passes. Bondi's jaw tightens. Someone coughs in the back. The cameras catch it all. The frozen expression, the quiver at the corner of her mouth, the microsecond of doubt she tries to bury. The screen freezes there. A narrator's voice breaks the silence, calm and measured. What you're about to see sent shockwaves across the nation. A meltdown so public, so unrestrained. It exposed everything wrong with performative politics. Cut to quick flashes. Cable news chirons screaming meltdown, hashtags lighting up phones across the country. A collage of reaction faces, shocked, thrilled, vindicated. The narrator continues, the tone now tightening like a drumbeat. Because, in a world where outrage is currency, what happens when the mask slips? When control gives way to chaos, and the cameras are still rolling. The footage resumes. Bondi fumbles for words. Crockett doesn't move. Her silence becomes the most powerful sound in the room. The balance of power has shifted, not through shouting, but through composure. One woman's calm exposing another's collapse, and as the echo of that question, "Do you even know what you're defending anymore?" hangs in the air, the narration lowers to a whisper. But what triggered this explosion? To understand that, we have to go back. For years, the committee room had become more theater than chamber. Each exchange designed not for truth, but for clips. It wasn't about legislation anymore. It was about lighting, about who could deliver the next viral moment. The hearings that once shaped policy now shaped trending hashtags. And within that new political arena, Pam Bondi had learned the rules by heart. Once hailed as the face of polished conservatism, a sharp dresser with sharper talking points, Bondi had long understood how to command attention. But attention had changed. The careful press conferences, the lawyerly control, the golden era interviews, they didn't get clicks anymore. The currency of power had shifted, traded away from restraint and toward rage, so Bondi adapted. The smile grew tighter, the tone louder, the arguments shorter. Truth became optional, but virality became everything. Narration fades in, heavy with reflection. There was a time when Pam Bondi stood for discipline and decorum. But politics, like fame, demands a price, and the more she paid, the less of herself remained. Montage imagery unfolds. Bondi on morning news panels, turning interruptions into applause lines. Rally stages, bathed in red and gold lights. 1,000 microphones capturing every smirk, every soundbite. With each appearance, it grew less like the prosecutor she once was, and more like the performance she thought America wanted to see. And yet, beyond the lights, another force was rising. A new generation of lawmakers unwilling to play by the old script. Among them was Jasmine Crockett, a woman forged in real fights, not rehearsed outrage. When she spoke, she didn't perform. She prosecuted. Her words landed with surgical precision, each question carefully measured to reveal. Not to grandstand, clips of Crockett speaking ripple across the screen. Methodical, factual, unflinching. No shouting, no spectacle, just steady conviction. The narrator continues. Where others sought applause, she sought answers. And in that difference lay the seed of collision. As Bondi leaned further into the art of provocation, Crockett leaned deeper into discipline. One built noise, the other built credibility. Their paths were destined to cross, not because of chance, but because the system itself had been primed for it. A perfect storm of ego meeting, integrity under the unforgiving light of a live broadcast. The stakes were never just personal, they were cultural. This was the new battleground for America's identity. Polished privilege versus principled persistence. A clash between those who mastered the spectacle and those who refused to be consumed by it. Narration slows, voice lowering. And so, by the time they met across that table, the moment wasn't an accident. It was an inevitability. The camera didn't create the tension. It only revealed what had been simmering all along. A brief pause. Bondi appears in archival footage, smiling confidently as cameras flash, unaware of what the future holds. Crockett, in contrast, reviews her notes in silence. pen tapping lightly, calm and unreadable. The narrator's tone turns prophetic. Every empire of performance ends the same way. In the moment when pretense meets precision, when volume meets virtue, when the act can no longer hold, Bondi's old clips rewind and blur into static. The sound of applause fades, replaced by a faint echo of Crockett's steady voice. It's not confrontation yet, but the air feels charged, inevitable. And just before the screen fades to black, the voice returns, low and deliberate, but the cracks in Bondi's composure were already showing, long before the cameras started rolling. The camera rewinds to a younger Pam Bondi, framed by the soft glow of Florida sunlight. She steps to a podium as the newly elected Attorney General. Confident, articulate, crisp in a pastel suit that gleams under the flashbulbs. The crowd cheers. The press praises her as a rising star, the face of a new conservative generation, one that promised reform without rancor. Her voice then was steady, almost gentle. "We're here to serve the people of Florida," she said, smiling for the cameras. In that moment, it felt sincere. For a time, she lived up to the image. Her early years were marked by clean press conferences, polished interviews, a reputation for composure. She projected something rare, a blend of charm and control. Even her critics admitted she had a gift for presentation, but presentation has a hunger of its own. The more she mastered the performance, the more it began to master her. The narrator's voice deepens. Power rewards those who stay seen. But to stay seen, one must never stop performing. The slide begins slowly. Small controversies at first, choices questioned, decisions that hinted at favoritism, ethics lines blurred in pursuit of loyalty. Every time criticism rose, Bondi smiled wider, leaned harder into her role as the cool-headed defender of the cause. But the camera's affection is fickle. Once it grants attention, it demands more. Soon the interview shifted from policy to punditry. She left the courtroom for the studio set, swapping legal briefs for teleprompters. The lighting changed, harsher, hotter. The audience larger, but less forgiving. She found herself debating not in chambers, but on morning shows, where outrage was the new eloquence and emotion the new authority. Clips flash by, Bondi raising her voice on a panel, deflecting a question with practiced indignation, pausing just long enough for the producers to cut to a dramatic commercial break. The narrator threads through the chaos. She was no longer shaping the story. She had become part of it. Transformation didn't happen overnight. Each appearance pulled her deeper, until the boundaries between conviction and performance blurred completely. In the mirror, she saw not the attorney who once quoted statutes, but a celebrity built from conflict. A woman who knew how to command the camera, but not always the truth. Her critics multiplied. Journalists revisited old cases, questioning motives. Advocacy groups called out selective prosecutions, campaign donations, the optics of loyalty traded for access. She called it bias, a smear. The old polished smile hardened into something else, defensive, brittle. The calm tone was gone, replaced by that thin thread of anger that always hums when control begins to slip. And yet, there was still a glimmer of something human behind it. The tragedy of Bondi's fall wasn't that she turned villain overnight. It was that she never saw the transformation happening. She believed she was still fighting for the same ideals, still the hero in her own story. The cameras didn't show her doubt, only her defiance. And so the persona grew louder, more defiant, until even her sincerity sounded like theater. Footage cuts to a talk show interview. Bondi defending her record, voice shaking slightly as she insists she's being unfairly targeted. The host nods politely. The segment trends for a day, then disappears beneath the next controversy. But for Bondi, something irreversible has shifted. She's chasing the validation that used to come easily, and every time it slips away, she reaches harder for the next spotlight. Narration continues, almost mournful. For some, power fades quietly. For others, it screams on its way out. The fall is never just about failure. It's about addiction to being watched. In her last few television appearances before the hearing, the change is impossible to miss. The charm is replaced with defensiveness, the calm with edge. Her sentences spill faster, interruptions sharper. The once impenetrable confidence flickers. The internet notices. Clips circulate. Audiences whisper what no politician ever wants to hear. She's losing it still. She presses on, convinced that a louder performance will restore what silence took. She doesn't see that her greatest enemy isn't the opposition, it's the reflection staring back at her through the camera lens. The narrator's tone tightens. The music darkens. Hubris is a slow poison. It flatters first, then isolates. And by the time its victim realizes, the applause has already turned to echo. The screen fades from old footage to the sterile glow of the committee hearing room. Bondi sits beneath the fluorescent lights again, but this time, the smiles are gone. Her eyes flick toward the cameras, searching for control that no longer exists, and the voice concludes. Cold and precise. but where arrogance found its match was in a congresswoman who came prepared to expose it all. Long before the hearing lights glared down on her, Jasmine Crockett had been fighting in quieter rooms. Courtrooms where the walls whispered stories of struggle and clients clutched their futures in trembling hands. She didn't have fame then, or microphones angled in her direction. What she had was resolve. It's a kind that doesn't come from ambition, but from necessity. She'd grown up hearing that justice was supposed to be blind, but in the neighborhoods she served, she saw that blindness wasn't justice, it was indifference. So she became the voice that wouldn't look away. Every client she defended, every protest she joined, every night she stayed up reviewing case files, all of it forged her calm. She learned that outrage can make noise, but composure makes change. The narrator speaks over a slow rhythm, steady as her heartbeat. Before she was a congresswoman, she was a defender. Before she debated politicians, she defended people who had nothing but truth on their side. And she learned early, the louder they get, the quieter you become. Images flicker. Crockett at a courthouse podium, hair pulled back, papers in hand. Crockett on the steps with community members, her voice carrying over chants. Crockett facing down dismissive judges, with that same unyielding gaze she would one day level across a congressional table. There's no grandeur in these moments, only grit. It's the kind that comes from surviving scrutiny without surrendering to it. When the narrator continues, the tone warms. Crockett never chased the spotlight. The spotlight found her, and when it did, she treated it not as a reward, but as a responsibility. Her colleagues describe her as meticulous. Every question rehearsed, every fact double-checked. She'd tell young interns, "Don't raise your voice, raise your argument." They'd laugh, thinking it was a slogan, until they saw her in motion, dismantling contradictions, one calmly phrased question at a time. The transition from attorney to congresswoman wasn't smooth, and it wasn't supposed to be. Washington doesn't open its doors to women like her, not icily. The suits are pressed, the smiles rehearsed, and the unwritten rule still lingers. Stay polite, stay small. Crockett never obeyed it. When she took her oath, she didn't promise comfort, she promised truth. As the footage shifts to her early congressional days, the rhythm builds. The narrator's tone deepens. She walked into those halls not as an outsider looking in, but as a reminder that the people who built this country still deserved a seat at its table. Her speeches carried something different. It's not the polished cadence of a career politician, but the sincerity of someone who'd argued too many real cases to mistake performance for purpose. Her pauses mattered. Her questions cut to bone. Colleagues who underestimated her learned quickly, behind that calm voice was a mind built like a scalpel. In interviews, she never bragged. She'd shrug off compliments and say, "I just prepare harder than they expect me to." But those who worked beside her knew the truth. Preparation wasn't her edge. Authenticity was. She didn't perform strength. She embodied it. And that authenticity had a gravity of its own, pulling the nation's eyes toward her every time she spoke. Clips play of her challenging witnesses, defending marginalized voices, calling out hypocrisy with surgical precision. In each one, her tone remains steady, her posture unshaken. The storm rages around her, but she doesn't flinch. She's learned that composure is power's quietest form. Then, a moment of reflection. Crockett in her office late at night, city lights flickering behind her. The narrator softens. The same calm that steadied her clients now steadies her country. She's not fighting for applause. She's fighting to remind America of itself. Her staff sometimes worries that she doesn't celebrate enough, that she moves from one victory straight into the next battle. She just smiles and says, "Justice doesn't clock out." That's the rhythm she lives by. Tireless, intentional, forward-moving. But under the calm, there's a fire. She's seen too much injustice to ever grow numb. Each new confrontation feels personal not because it threatens her, but because it threatens the ideals she's sworn to protect. She knows the cameras love a spectacle, but she refuses to give them one. She's not there to play a part. She's there to expose the script. The narrator grows contemplative again. In an age where shouting passes for leadership, she's proof that silence can roar louder. Her composure isn't absence of emotion. It's control of it. Control. The voice lowers is how you win the long game. As the music swells, her story converges with the one we've been watching unfold. The light of her integrity and the shadow of Bondi's hubris begin to overlap. Two trajectories set on a collision course. One built on validation, the other on vocation. The narrator lets a final sentence linger like a spark before ignition. And when the two finally met across that committee table, sparks didn't just fly, they ignited a national conversation. The air in the hearing room feels charged, as if static has built up between every word spoken. Pam Bondi leans forward in her seat, voice raised, trying to command the floor through sheer force of volume. "This entire line of questioning is absurd," she snaps, gesturing broadly toward Jasmine Crockett. "You're twisting the facts, Congresswoman." Crockett doesn't move. Her eyes remain fixed, her tone calm. I'm simply asking for clarification. She says each syllable deliberate, measured. Did you or did you not authorize the correspondence under your signature? Bondi exhales sharply, turning toward the chairman for cover. This is badgering, she insists. She's clearly trying to create a moment for the cameras. The irony hangs heavy in the air. The cameras are, in fact, already zooming in. Tight close-ups capturing every twitch in Bondi's jaw, every flicker of irritation across her carefully composed face. The audience watching online begins to comment in real time. She's unraveling. Crockett's not even sweating. Watch this. Bondi's about to lose it. Congresswoman Crockett repeats, a simple yes or no will do. Bondi's voice tightens, defensive. You wouldn't understand the nuances here. Crockett tilts her head slightly as if studying a witness. Try me. A low murmur ripples through the committee. Some members glance up from their notes. Others shift uncomfortably. It's no longer a dialogue, it's a dissection. The calm voice slicing through the bluster. Every interruption Bondi throws feels smaller, less certain, as if she's fighting an invisible current she can't control. Narration weaves through the moment, quiet but cutting. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, while the world listens closer. Bondi raises her hand, trying to reclaim the rhythm. You're grandstanding, she says, forcing a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. This isn't about truth, it's about headlines. Crockett's response lands like a scalpel. If truth makes headlines, perhaps that says something about who's been avoiding it. The murmurs grow louder. A journalist's tweet flashes across the screen. Crockett's precision greater than Bondi's performance. The room feels like it's turning. Bondi's posture shifts, defensive walls rising. She leans back, crosses her arms, her tone sharpening into something brittle. You're out of line. Crockett doesn't blink. Then draw the line for me. Where does accountability stop and excuses begin? For a beat, silence stretches. Even the chairman hesitates before adjusting his microphone. The balance of power has tilted almost imperceptibly, but completely. Bondi's authority, once rooted in control of the narrative, now feels hollow. The audience senses it. The tension becomes its own kind of spectacle. A duel where every pause hits harder than a shout. The narrator's voice hums beneath the scene. In every confrontation, there's a moment when control changes hands. Not with force, but with focus. The one who stays calm wins. Bondi interrupts again, her tone rising in frustration. You're twisting my words. Crockett leans in, voice low but unshaken. No, Congresswoman, I'm just repeating them back to you. The line lands like a verdict. Laughter ripples faintly from the gallery, quickly hushed but undeniable. Bondi's jaw tightens. The camera lingers on her expression, the flicker of panic behind the polished veneer. Meanwhile, Crockett straightens her papers, as though this is just another day at work. The contrast is striking, one woman unraveling in real time, the other embodying quiet command. It's the collision of performance and principle, and for the first time, the performance is losing. Narration cuts in again, voice calm and prophetic. When noise meets discipline, only one survives, the one who doesn't flinch. Bondi stammers something about unfair treatment, but her words overlap with the gavel's faint tap. The chairman urges decorum. The moment should move on, but no one in the room is ready to breathe yet. The tension lingers, electric. Suspended in the silence Crockett has built. Crockett glances down at her notes, pen poised between her fingers. She looks up one last time, eyes locked on Bondi, and then, with the faintest smile, she says evenly, one last question, Congresswoman. The narration pauses. Heartbeats steady in the background. Then, with one question, Crockett changed everything. For a long second, the room holds its breath. Jasmine Crockett sits completely still, faint hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence between her and Pam Bondi. Every camera is fixed on the table, lenses trained like witnesses. Then, Crockett looks up, her tone even and deliberate. Congresswoman, she begins, if your defense of this policy is truly based on principle, can you explain why your office approved an identical measure when it benefited your donors? It lands like a thunderclap. The question is surgical, clean, precise, lethal. The kind of question that leaves no exit, no pivot, no script to hide behind. Bondi blinks, mouth parting slightly as if her brain is racing to catch up with her voice. That's completely irrelevant, she manages, eyes darting to the chairman, then back to Crockett. This is a misrepresentation. Crockett doesn't move. It's a yes or no question. A rustle of papers fills the air as members shift in their seats. Somewhere in the background, a staffer's pen stops, mid-note. The stillness becomes oppressive. Crockett's calm is unnerving, each word measured, each pause deliberate. Bondi straightens, her smile returning but strained. You don't understand how these processes work, she says, attempting to reassert control. Crockett's reply is almost gentle. Then please, enlighten us. Narration cuts in, smooth and deliberate, in a chess match. There's a moment when the queen realizes the pawns have closed in. Every move left leads to checkmate. Bondi tries to pivot, We're talking about completely different circumstances, different funding structures, different legal frameworks. Crockett nods slightly, voice still even. Different outcomes, certainly. But identical signatures? Yours, twice. The word twice hangs in the air like a gavel. A slow-motion montage unfolds. A committee member raises an eyebrow. Another leans back with a low whistle. Across the table, an aide's hand goes to his forehead. Whispered words barely escape the microphones. She's done. Bondi's lips press together, color rising in her cheeks. She reaches for a document, flipping pages as though the answer might materialize somewhere in the text. This is being taken out of context, she insists, but the words stumble over themselves. Crockett tilts her head. Context, Congresswoman, is what I'm providing. The narrator interjects again, voice cutting through like an invisible blade. It wasn't shouting that one, this exchange. It was control. It was the precision of truth against the chaos of ego. The camera catches Bondi's face close up now. Every flicker of emotion is visible. Disbelief, anger, then something quieter, doubt. She starts to speak, but Crockett's voice slides gently over hers. So I'll ask once more. Were both measures approved under your office, or not? Bondi exhales audibly, the sound amplified in the silence. Yes, she mutters, but under very different circumstances. Crockett raises a hand slightly, cutting her off without aggression. Thank you. That's all I needed. The words are simple, final. The kind of line that ends an argument without needing volume or venom. The narrator's tone shifts, almost reverent. In that instant, every layer of defense fell away. The performance ended. The mask slipped. The truth, quiet, deliberate, unbothered, had finally taken the stage. Cameras flash, tweets fly. Crockett just ended her. That's not questioning. That's art. Bondi tries to recover, launching into a defensive monologue about bias and double standards, but the momentum is gone. Her words tumble, incoherent and circular, each one digging the hole deeper. Crockett listens, patient, almost compassionate, letting the noise fold in on itself. When she finally responds, it's with a single sentence. Accountability isn't an attack, Congresswoman. It's democracy. A murmur sweeps through the room. Even the chairman hides a smirk behind his hand. The crowd outside the chamber door, watching through glass panels, presses closer. For a moment, the nation seems to be holding its collective breath. Watching the transformation of one woman's arrogance into a cautionary tale, narration returns, deliberate and rhythmic. It wasn't just a takedown, it was a revelation. The power of precision over projection. The strength of restraint over rage. Crockett didn't need to destroy Bondi. She let Bondi do that herself. Bondi gathers her papers, the rustle betraying her trembling hands. This hearing is a farce, she says sharply. I refuse to participate in this circus. Crockett leans back, folding her hands neatly on the table. You already have. The room freezes again. Even those who sympathize with Bondi can't deny what they've just witnessed. The shift is complete. The hunter has become the spectacle, the once untouchable figure now unraveling under her own contradictions. The camera pans to Crockett, face calm, eyes steady. There's no gloating, no visible triumph, just quiet certainty. She doesn't need applause. The truth is, its own standing ovation. The narrator's voice fades in over the faint hum of background noise. Every generation has its reckoning. Sometimes it doesn't arrive in headlines or speeches. Sometimes it arrives in a single question, asked by someone who refuses to be intimidated. Bondi's gaze meets Crockett's one last time. A flicker of something. Fear, maybe respect, crossing her features before she looks away. The gavel sounds, signaling a recess, but the sound feels ceremonial. The real verdict has already been delivered in the silence that followed that single word twice. The scene slows, sound fading to a heartbeat. Crockett gathers her notes, the corners perfectly aligned. Behind her, aides whisper excitedly, but she moves as if she's still in the courtroom of her early years. Methodical, graceful, shaken. Narration softens, the tone reflective. Some moments define careers, others define character. And in that committee room, while the world watched, Jasmine Crockett reminded America what the latter looks like. The music rises, low strings, then silence. The last image freezes on Bondi's downturned eyes, then cuts abruptly to a flood of social media reactions bursting across the screen. Trending hashtags, flashing headlines, reaction videos looping the moment of collapse. The narrator lowers their voice to a whisper. But as the clip spread online, what happened next shocked even Crockett herself. It began like a spark, one clip, 15 seconds long. By the next morning, it was a wildfire. The question, the pause, the single word, twice, had become legend. #Crockett clapback trended at #1 before sunrise. #Bondi meltdown followed close behind, flaring across every platform like a digital echo. TikTok loops replayed the moment in cinematic slow motion. Creators spliced it with movie scores, heartbeat effects, and text overlays. This is how you check arrogance with facts. The late-night hosts had their monologues ready by evening. One quipped, Pam Bondi walked into that hearing like it was a press junket, and walked out like it was a deposition. Laughter roared, but even in humor there was awe. Across comment sections, people wrote things like, finally, someone who doesn't take the bait in Crockett just gave a masterclass in composure. Within 24 hours, millions had watched the exchange. News outlets dissected every second, replaying the clip frame by frame, breaking down Bondi's expression, Crockett's tone, the long silence between question and answer. Some headlines read like verdicts, the moment that ended the act. Others tried to spin it. Was Crockett too harsh? But the narrative had already formed, and it wasn't written by pundits. It was written by the people. In the chaos of commentary, Bondi's team scrambled. A carefully worded statement appeared on her official account. The clip circulating online omits critical context. The Congresswoman was addressing complex policy nuances that were deliberately misrepresented. But the internet doesn't do nuance, it does moments. In this moment, had already burned itself into the nation's collective memory. Montage of social media reactions fills the screen. A college student laughing into her phone camera? This is what happens when you bring talking points to a fact fight. A veteran tweeting Crockett stood taller by sitting still. A teacher writing, that's how you handle a bully, with grace, not volume. Everywhere, the sentiment was the same. Restraint had won. Meanwhile, Crockett said nothing. No press release. No victory lap. No interviews. Her social media feed stayed quiet. Just a repost of a quote card. Let the facts speak. The silence became its own message. In a world addicted to reaction, Crockett's stillness felt radical. People noticed. Analysts called it a masterstroke in modern political communication. It wasn't spin. It was integrity. Narration cuts through the noise. While others fought for the last word, she let truth echo for her. And in that echo, people heard something rare. Dignity. Clips roll of talk show panels, split-screen debates, and op-eds flashing on screen. Crockett redefines political power. Bondi's fall from composure. How one question changed the game. Even celebrities joined in. A-list actors quoted Crockett's line. Athletes tweeted the clip with fire emojis. Influencers posted reaction videos titled "The Calm Before the Clutch." The discourse wasn't just political anymore. It was cultural. Then came the memes. Bondi's frozen expression edited next to collapsing dominoes. Crockett's calm face framed by angelic lighting. Every remix, every joke, every creative reimagining only deepened the same truth. People were starved for authenticity. Narration continues, soft but charged. This wasn't just a viral clip. It was a mirror. For millions, it reflected what they'd been craving. Accountability without cruelty. Confidence without chaos. The camera pans to Crockett walking down a Capitol hallway days later. Aides behind her, reporters calling questions. She smiles politely, says nothing, and disappears behind a wooden door. That clip, too, goes viral. Captioned "Power doesn't need to shout." Bondi, meanwhile, retreats. Appearances are canceled. Her team insists she's focusing on her work, but the optics tell another story. Commentators start asking whether this was her moment of overexposure. The same networks that once courted her now debate whether her style belongs to a fading era. The narrator lowers their voice, almost wistful. Every empire of noise eventually meets its silence. And in that silence, the audience decides who they still believe. Cut to a montage of ordinary Americans, teachers, activists, nurses, sharing the clip, quoting Crockett's line in their own words. It becomes more than a political moment. It becomes a symbol of emotional intelligence, of grace under fire. Hashtags morph into movements, hashtag facts over fury, hashtag grace wins. Even some conservatives quietly admit online, I may not agree with her politics, but that's how you handle yourself. It's not a partisan victory, it's a human one. As the week unfolds, media coverage begins to shift from spectacle to meaning. Analysts ask whether the era of viral outrage is finally collapsing under its own exhaustion. Commentators invoke the word decency again, as if rediscovering an old language. Narration rises with a slow build. The clip became more than a takedown. It became a reset button. Proof that truth still has rhythm, and composure still has power. Crockett doesn't chase the spotlight, but the spotlight finds her anyway. Requests for interviews flood in. Late-night shows want her. Magazines call her the calm in the storm. She declines most, staying focused on her committee work. Her silence speaks louder than every headline combined. The narrator's tone turns reflective. In a world addicted to outrage, stillness can sound like rebellion. Crockett's calm wasn't just strategy, it was a statement that integrity doesn't need an audience to exist. The final montage slows. Bondi's empty press podium, social feeds scrolling with praise, a nation buzzing but somehow quieter. And then, in a single breath, the narration teases what's next. But beneath the trending chaos, Something deeper was happening, a cultural shift few had words for. When the noise finally subsided, what lingered wasn't the shouting, the headlines, or even the hashtags. It was the silence. That rare, resonant quiet that follows when truth has been spoken clearly enough to need no defense. In that silence, something shifted. For months, maybe years, politics had felt like a shouting match with no referee. A competition of who could interrupt louder, posture harder, insult sharper. But Crockett's composure had done something that no scandal or soundbite could. It reminded people what real strength looks like. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. The narration slows, voice low and measured. In an era built on reaction, she chose reflection. In a culture obsessed with control, she chose calm. Clips fade in. Crockett walking through the Capitol, greeting staffers laughing softly with interns. There's no triumph in her face, no gloating, just steadiness. She doesn't look like someone who won a fight. She looks like someone who never needed to throw a punch to begin with. Bondi, by contrast, appears only through flickers, clips of her past, confident, assured, untouchable. Then recent footage, deflecting questions, offering forced smiles, the fatigue visible behind the polish. The narrator continues, Pam Bondi wasn't evil. She was just consumed by the performance, the validation, the endless chase for control in a system that rewards outrage over honesty. Her downfall wasn't failure, it was exposure. It's not a condemnation, it's a warning. The camera lingers on Bondi's old press conferences. Her careful phrasing, her certainty that image was power, but image, the voice says, is fragile. Truth isn't. Cut back to Crockett, mid-question from another hearing weeks later. She's calm again, surgical again, but now the room listens differently. There's weight behind her words, not because of the virality, but because of what she represented. The audience understands authenticity isn't a tactic, it's an inheritance. The music rises slowly, warm, orchestral like dawn. The narration swells. Crockett showed a truth our culture keeps forgetting, that dignity doesn't need to dominate the room to define it. That silence, used wisely, can be the loudest rebuttal to chaos. That empathy can disarm what anger never could. Clips of social media comments flash again, not the memes, but the messages that came later. A teacher writing, "My students watched this and talked about what real professionalism means." A young girl posting, "I want to learn to stay calm like her." A veteran commenting, "It reminded me that composure is courage." The story had transcended the spectacle. It had become a lesson. Then the narration softens, reflective and poetic. Leadership isn't about silencing others. It's about standing firm when the world tries to shout you down. It's about speaking truth so clearly even your silence echoes. Footage slows, Bondi exiting a hearing, eyes down, surrounded by cameras. Then Crockett, leaving the same way, head high, no entourage, no noise. Just the soft rhythm of footsteps. For every voice that shouts to be heard, the narrator continues, there's another that proves listening is power. Crockett didn't just win an argument. She reclaimed a language we'd forgotten, the language of integrity. The camera pulls back, Capitol lights glowing at dusk, the hum of the city fading. The narrator's tone becomes intimate now, as though addressing the viewer directly, because in the end, this wasn't about politics. It was about presence, about the kind of strength that can't be televised, only felt, the strength of patience, the courage of restraint, the grace to stay grounded when provoked. One final montage, Bondi's face in still frame, then Crockett's, fading into an image of the American flag in soft focus. The music swells, hopeful and resonant. Dignity, the voice concludes, is louder than rage. Always has been, always will be. A long pause. The sound of a heartbeat fades beneath the final line, and as the clip faded from trending lists, one question remained. What kind of voice do we want leading the conversation? Do you even know what you're defending anymore? The line that started it all, once a challenge to one woman, now echoes as a question for an entire generation of leaders, commentators, and citizens. In the weeks since that exchange, the moment has become more than just a viral clip. It's become a mirror, and what it reflects back is up to us. The narrator's voice carries a quiet strength, because this wasn't just about Pam Bondi or Jasmine Crockett. It was about every voice that mistakes volume for vision, every stage that confuses spectacle for service. It was about rediscovering the power of calm in a world addicted to chaos. Images flash, people sharing the clip, classrooms discussing it, families nodding around dinner tables. We watched composure win. We watched truth outlast noise. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, we saw what real leadership looks like. Not in shouting, but in stillness. The music swells, gentle but resolute. So if you believe calm should defeat chaos, if you believe grace should still matter in public life, share this story. Not just the video, but the value it represents. Footage slows, Crockett smiling quietly as she leaves the chamber, her words still reverberating in the air. Because dignity, the voice concludes, isn't fragile. It's contagious. And every time you amplify it, you remind the world that integrity still has an audience. The screen fades to black, white text appearing one line at a time. Truth doesn't trend forever, but it endures. Subscribe, share, stand for calm over chaos. Then, one final whisper before silence. This is how we change the conversation. Together.